Hello everybody, this is Evan Irwin. It is July 3rd, 2006, and today I bring to you a Ravnica sealed deck in preparation for Grand Prix St. Louis that happens on July 22nd of this month, and one event that I'm planning on attending. And today I wanted to generate a Ravnica block sealed deck for Magic Workstation and explain how I build sealed decks, why, and maybe we'll learn some things along the way. Starting out, what I've done here is I've loaded up the deck, the sealed deck, the entire 75 cards into Magic Workstation MWS Play program that lets me put all the cards out into play to let you see them. You can see them as I hover over them on the right here. What I'm going to do is basically get the wheat from the chaff and take out all of our unplayables, because once we've done that, we can see what our deepest colors are, which is basically what are the strongest, most efficient cards in that color. And with Ravnica, those will be color combinations, what guilds are the best for us to play, and by doing that we can build our deck from there. So let's begin. Over here in the lands, Karus are always worth playing, even if you're not in those colors. As long as you're in one of those colors, then they're always worth playing, and never leave them out of your deck. The reason is that Karus are 2 lands in one. They are 2 mana in one. If you open your hand and you see 3 lands and one of them is a Karu, you suddenly have 4 mana instead of 3. They also ironically enough, reward the player going first, as if the player going first didn't have the tempo advantage already. Karus simply give you that much more. So we're going to get rid of Nivix, Area of the Fire Mine, because it is absolutely unplayable, and if you don't know why, read it again until it comes to you. We're going to get rid of Wizened Snitches, because I don't think that's the most amazing playable blue card ever. We're keeping Steam Core Weird, which is fantastic. Rid of Passage is pretty bad. We're going to get rid of that. Tidewater Minion is definitely playable. It's fantastic with Karu lands, is fantastic with things that tap to perform an ability, of course. Quick Change is unplayable. Over here, we're going to get rid of Dizzy Spell. We'll get rid of Not Ethereal Usher, which is not completely unplayable. We're not getting rid of Followed Footsteps, which is one of our rares and one of our bomb rares. We basically get our best creature, or see their best creature, and begin to copy it over and over again. Giga Drouse is a maybe. We're not going to cut it out immediately, but I'm not a huge fan. Infiltrator's Mage Mark is definitely a playable card. We're going to keep that. Leyline of Singularity is pretty worthless. Maybe against token decks we can bring it in, but usually it's pretty bad. Novigen Sages is a great card. Helped me win a Grand Prix trial all by itself. This basically lets you use and abuse stuff like Vigian Hydropon, which I don't think we have any, but if you have cards like that, a lot of graft, it's definitely worth thinking about. And even if it's going to die, pay 2 mana, remove its 4 counters, and draw 2 cards. You can't really beat that. Surveilling Sprite is not the worst thing ever. We'll keep it. Telling Time is definitely playable, and so is Terraformer. Terraformer is fantastic in 3 and 4 color decks because it can start smoothing your mana all by itself. The next color over here is black. Stinkweed Imp is definitely playable, so is Ostiary Thrall. Roofstalker White's fantastic, so is Strands of Undeath. Delirium Skeins, not a huge fan of this card, and I don't think it's that great in sealed. Demir Houseguard is awesome because not only does he have fear, not only can he regenerate, but he can also transmute for any 4 mana casting cost bombs you have in your deck. Infectious Host is pretty awful, so we're not going to use him. Necromantic Thirst is pretty bad in my experience, and Nettling Curse is worse. Woebringer Demon is not worth playing. I don't like this card at all. He just seems that unless you can really get some sort of token advantage in a green-white-black deck using Celestia's token abilities such as Vitu-Ghazi and whatnot, he's really not worth the trouble. So if we find something like that, we can bring it back in, but for right now, he's definitely a no. Next up is Thought Picker Witch, which is not terrible, not the worst 1-drop ever, and if you have some token-making abilities, can lock a player out of the game, just like that. And Seal of Doom is removal, and you never get rid of removal. Up next is White with Conclave Equinaut, which is fantastic. Conclave's Blessing, which is not. Gatehound is not playable. There was a point in time when I first saw Gatehound, and I was like, wow, this card is ridiculous. I've learned better, folks. Guardian's Mage Mark is fun, if not a little battle growthy. Battle growthy was a 1 green instant from Mirrodin block that put a +1/+1 counter on a creature. Some pros have been saying this is sort of underrated, but I think it's pretty bad, and we'll put it in the maybe pile. There's no real maybe pile up here. I'm just stacking things around. But if we think about it, Lionheart Maverick is really bad. Screeching Griffin is not. It's a flyer, and that's great. Soulsworn Jury is not terrible, not unplayable, not as great as everyone thinks it is. And Oathsworn Giant is a house. This guy is amazing and can change and take over games by himself. Over in red, Whiptail Morlock is not playable, and neither is Viashino Slasher. Not completely unplayable, just not really recommended. Torpid Morlock is actually a very good card, particularly in Sealed. It makes people trade usually much better creatures than your one drop defender guy. So we'll keep him in the maybe pile. Surge of Zeal is not playable. Barbarian Riftcutter is playable, can get rid of Karoo lands. I don't like Fencer's Mage Mark. It's a little slow, it's a little obvious. The bonus of the white and the blue ones was it gave you unblockability or it gave you the surprise factor. Up next you got Galvanic Arc, which is awesome. Goblin Spelunkers are amazingly playable because almost everyone plays red for any sort of direct damage or solid creatures they may have pulled. Ogre Gatecrasher is great because he gets rid of stuff like Soulsworn Jury, he gets rid of Carven Caryatids, he gets rid of Benevolent Ancestors, definitely not to be underrated. And even if he's a 3/3 for 4, he's a 3/3 for 4, people. A Hill Giant can still smash face. Order Run Commando is a 4/1 for 4, and if we're going to use our awesome white cards, he's definitely super playable. Smash is great because it takes care of signets, takes care of bombs like Sunforger and whatnot. Spark Mage Apprentice is great because it gets rid of little tiny utility creatures that have showed up, such as Squealing Devil. It also gets rid of, Elvish Sky Sweepers, all sort of little utility guys this guy can get rid of. And, well, as I mentioned, Squealing Devil is not unplayable, but you gotta have black. So far, our black is fairly deep. We got some removal, we got some great creatures, but we'll see what happens in green, which is usually the most powerful color in influencing what you'll play in the draft, beyond the gold cards, of course. But the monocolored cards, we got some Aquastrand Spider, which is great. Battering Worm, which I'm not a huge fan of. He's better in Sealed than he is in draft because Sealed is slower. Sealed gives you more mana, and Battering Worm needs a ton of it. So with that said, I think I'm going to play him. Dowsing Shaman is great because he'll get stuff back like Galvanic Arc. He'll also get back stuff like Pollen Bright Wings, which this build pulled, which is amazing. It also gets back Fists of Ironwind right below him. Goliath Spider, I'm not a huge fan of him. If I were going to run Battering Worm and Goliath Spider, I would need maybe some more mana fixing than I currently have. 2 Karoos are nothing to scoff at, but at the same time, nothing to write home about either. So I'm going to get rid of Goliath Spider and keep the Battering Worm. I'd like to choose one or the other. Might of the Nephilim, it's another iffy one. It's a good combat trick, particularly if you're low on them, but we'll see what we get to in the gold color cards and leave this one in. Perilous Forays is really bad. Stoneseer Hierophant is really bad. And Silhana Ledgewalker lets you enable stuff like Bloodthirst, but we don't have any Bloodthirst creatures. So he's still a solid 2-drop. In our multicolor, we have Wrecking Ball, which is great. We have Thunder Song Trumpeter, which is great. We have Twisted Justice, which is great. We have Argus Cause, which is amazing. We have Gaze. We have Guardian of the Vitu-Ghazi, not to be scoffed at. We have Mortify. How good is our red, white, black looking right now? We would have to leave our green behind and our, very solid blue. But wow, red, white, black has some incredible cards. I'm talking Skylight Legionnaire. I'm talking, could we splash for the Pollen Bright Wings? Maybe. Would it be better to splash for the Psychic Drain? Maybe. But I tell you what the breaker is, both Pillory of the Sleepless and Supply and Demand. Supply and Demand are incredible in Sealed. Supply particularly, because you now have the ability to just, for 1 green, 1 white, and as much mana as you have out there, to make tokens they can't deal with. So that card is a huge bomb, and that alone will make sure that we play green in this build. So after looking at our cards and looking at what we have, I think red, white, black with a little bit of green for some of the most powerful green cards we have is definitely the way to go. Join me next time, and I'll actually finish building this deck and show you a few sample hands.